Welcome back to the call up. We have a special episode today. It's Diamondbacks outfield prospect Ryan Waldschmidt joining us in the midst of a really hot stretch in Double A. So, Ryan, thanks for taking a break from the hot stretch and joining us here on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me.
So, I got to just start with that, right? I mean, you've climbed multiple levels here. You're in Double A now. That's the spot where a lot of people kind of circle and say, "Hey," especially for college guys, this is where you maybe get that first kind of punch in the mouth. You had like a little bit of just a getting your feet wet stretch as everybody does, but then boom, you go nuclear. What was it that kind of clicked for you there, and just how have you been feeling of late now that you're settled into Double A?
Yeah, obviously I've had a decent amount of success here recently, so it feels good to go out there and do that. But I think early on when I first got to Double A, I was a little amped up, excited to be at the new level, and with my play style and how I play the game, I'm kind of more of a not passive, but I'm selective. So like when I first got up here, I was swinging, I was trying to like do damage. I was swinging at pitches I normally wouldn't do, like usually swing at, just based on just kind of being up here for the first week. And I think after that first week, I kind of got comfortable again, got back to playing my game. And then I think that's kind of what I've done for the past month or so is just kind of got back to what I'm good at, swinging at my pitches, letting the pitcher make their pitches, working the counts, getting on base. And I think that's just been the big thing for me is kind of not making it any different than any other level I've been at. It's still the same game. Pitcher's still got to throw it in the zone. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is just not making it too big. Just kind of being where my feet are and just treating it like it's any other game.
Yeah, obviously it takes a bit there sometimes to get back in that groove when you get to that next level and you're excited to be there. Taking it a step back for a bit, for you heading into your draft year, coming off of injury, what was it like kind of getting into that season and just finding your groove ahead of obviously the potential of being drafted?
Yeah, that injury was just tough, in the sense of, going into your draft year. Like for me, I came from Charleston Southern, went to University of Kentucky, then, you finally get that opportunity to go play in the Cape and like make a name for yourself, put yourself out there. And then that got cut really short after a couple games when I ended up tearing my ACL. But I think it turned out to be a huge positive for me and just my career when it comes to like the mental side of the game. I think my entire life I was always super results oriented. Like I wanted to do well. Like I only base my performance on how well I did in the game. And I think after having that injury, I kind of switched the perspective of kind of just going out there and having fun with it and kind of just thinking like you never know when your last play could be. Like you never know if that's going to be your last step out of the season. You don't really know what's going on. So I think when I went out there and kind of dropped that burden of just being successful all the time and just going out there and having fun and just playing hard, I think that's really when I saw my just success kind of skyrocket from that. You kind of lose that pressure of always having to do well, always having to be successful. And then when you do that, you kind of loosen up and you play a lot more free and you play aggressive. And I think when you do those things, those kind of all kind of domino effect into having a really good season. And I think that's kind of what happened for me. And I think that's exactly what I took into the minor leagues, kind of that same approach. You play every day, you play 6 days a week. It could get really repetitive, but when you go out there and you just try and have fun with it and you just take the time in with the guys out there and you just do everything you can to enjoy the game, I think it makes it a lot easier to just continue to just build and build on those days.
Not to bring you back to such a difficult time because obviously things have been so good now, but you played what 3 games on the Cape before you went down, and it was
I think so, 3 or 4, yeah.
4 hits in the first one. So I mean, you're like, here I go, like here I'm really gonna make this name for myself. Also, I broadcasted in Katuitt for a year,
Oh, sweet.
and it's so fun out there. It's really cool, but
Yeah, it was a great time.
you kind of have that taken from you there, and I imagine there's a period of kind of feeling sorry for yourself as any human would, but then it's snapping in and say, okay, how do I turn this into the positive that you have now at this point, clearly with your perspective. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the timelines are, but you got hurt at like the end of June and you came back in February. And that
Yeah.
was in a game setting. So that means, I mean, you had to be, rolling before that. What
Mhm.
was your rehab like? And did you when did you kind of transition to the okay, this stinks to okay, I'm going to beat timelines or things like that? Because again, I don't know what the timeline you were given was, but it seems like that's a pretty quick turnaround from a torn ACL.
Yeah, I think so. I got my surgery, I think around July, maybe 7th or 7th to the 10th, somewhere around there. And then, the draft was not too long after that. That year's draft, not mine, but the year ahead of me. And I remember sitting there with my dad, and I'm like, ah, man, Dad, can we turn this off? Like, I really don't want to like watch this. Like, 'cause thinking, ACL, it's usually about a year. Um, and I'm sitting there like, okay, my draft year is a year from now, and I'm laying here on the couch, fresh out of ACL surgery. So right after that, I kind of is where I kind of flipped that switch. Like that night, I was pretty down and sorry for myself, but then I got up the next morning and I was like, you know what, that's not going to help me at all. This isn't going to move me in any positive direction. This is only going to hold me back. So for me, it was kind of just pouring into the people around me, because I was still at school, I was still at practice every day. So for me to be able to help them out, like help the guys, talk with them, just kind of pour into them, it really helped me. And obviously they were around me too, like pushing me to be better. And my trainer, Richie Wells, he actually passed away last year, but he
Mm.
was he uh he was with me every single day. He was pushing me. He wouldn't let me ever take anything off, anything for granted. And I think something that really helped me was kind of just going head on with everything. Knowing my timeline, there's no time to mess around. So the day it was like, okay, we got a sprint today, I was going 100%, even if I didn't know what was going to happen. You could baby into it, and then your sprints take 2, 3 weeks, and now you're building up to 100%. But I trusted him, and when he said it was okay to do something, I just went head on with it. And I think that's really what helped me speed up my recovery, because that just eliminates a couple of weeks every time you do something new. Because instead of babying into everything, I just went straight into it, straight for it, and I trusted what he had to say. I trusted the doctors around me. And I think that really helped me be able to kind of gain that confidence again, to be able to go out there 7.5 months later.
Yeah.
Whereas 7.5 to 12 months really changes my entire career. I mean, if I take those 12 months, I'm not probably sitting here today. I'm probably still, well, I probably would have played last year in college and then hopefully seen what happened from that. But I'm just really grateful for the people that were around me and how they pushed me.
Well, that's the amazing thing to me too is you mentioned just kind of when you got to double A, that feeling of pressing, wanting to do something a little bit, or just feeling eager. I imagine you had to be fighting that feeling a little bit too as well in 2024. Also, you only DH'd for like 7 games and you're back out in left field, which is amazing as well. But your game, as you mentioned, is so driven towards patience and drawing your walks and then picking your spots really well. You did that through your draft year, and I think that's a big reason why you were targeted as one of the top guys in the draft out of college and first round pick. But coming back from injury, how did you manage? Because I know that draft kind of looms, especially for guys in your situation where you could play your way into the first round, but you could also play your way into day two. If for some people, if it off of an injury, right, you just never know what's going to happen because the narratives kind of build from there. How did you manage that pressure? Because obviously you succeeded in the best way possible.
Yeah, like I said earlier, like just having that ability to kind of just try and have fun with it and not take anything for granted and kind of eliminate the idea of results. But that's always going to be there. Like everyone wants to be successful. Like you want to play well, and we base our success off of how the game goes. But for me, it was just about just playing hard and just showing them that I was healthy again. And that's going to be everyone's first question mark, is he his normal self? Is he back to what he was doing before? And I wanted to kind of leave no doubt with that. I tried to steal as many bases as I could. I tried to run it down in the outfield. I tried to just turn singles to doubles, whatever I could do. And I really think just kind of that saying of like playing on house money, that's kind of what I felt as soon as I got back. Like I got back so early from the injury. I was playing well. I would put myself in a position, I walked into the season not even expecting really to be playing. And then to be there for 2 weeks after opening day, I was like, man, this is house money.
Awesome.
Like you just got to play. Like just play baseball. Don't worry about the draft. Don't worry about the future. that's what I did kind of my entire life is kind of play for what's to come next. But last year was just playing for what's now, like where my feet are and just playing in the present. And I think that really helped me just kind of perform and just mentally and physically just kind of be there and just kind of do what I can each and every day to kind of just give me one step forward instead of just looking to what's to come later.
Yeah. So as you got going then, a couple games last year and then this year, do you feel like you've been able to carry that mentality into pro ball now and it's taken you to where you are at this point?
Yeah, I think so. Especially here, there's so many moving parts, and a lot of the stuff isn't really always dependent on just you. It's dependent on like there's levels above you. There's other things going on that is out of your control, and it's kind of like that idea of just controlling the controllables, and the things I can control is my effort and just the energy and my attitude, and those are the three things that you can control every day. And I think that's kind of what I go into each and every day thinking is just do what I can and just not worry about what else is going on around me, which I think is really important to go through the minor leagues because you don't know, like tomorrow you can be in AAA and or you can be here for the rest of the year. You never know. But just kind of taking it day by day and just being where your feet are and just doing whatever you can that day to kind of just improve yourself and just take that 1% each day and trying to take one step forward and not kind of worry about controlling the things that you can't because you never know what's going to happen. And I think it's a lot easier just mentally and just physically on yourself to kind of do that because the more you think about those outside factors, it's so much harder just to kind of focus on just playing baseball and just doing your thing.
I'm really fascinated by just how advanced your approach just seems to have always been. And just obviously that helps kind of soften the landing in professional baseball when you have, just such advanced plate discipline and swing decisions. And that's something that also can go both ways. So I think sometimes people conflate patience with a good approach, and sometimes, oh, you can be passive, as you alluded to earlier, but you've seemed to just balance those things so well, throughout your amateur and professional career. Something that does stand out to me sometimes is, when you go from college even to low A and these guys are effectively wild, sometimes that patience can almost work against you. And even though you're making the right swing decisions, it can pull you out of who you are a little bit. How was that transition for you? Did that seem to happen as much for you? And also, sometimes I feel like those types of players end up, like guys like yourself, end up feeling more comfortable in double A because at least in the general vicinity of where these pitches are going to be and what pitchers are trying to do. I would just love to know kind of how that's progressed for you, given the type of player that you are.
Yeah, I agree. Like the higher that you climb up the ladder, I feel like the more comfortable my at bats have been. I think even in spring training, like I remember doing like live at bats and I'd be facing the big league arms. Like I'd be facing like Eduardo Rodriguez or Merrill Kelly and you knew they were gonna be a couple inches off the plate if it's a ball and if it's in the zone, which is a lot more comfortable for me because then you kind of go in with your plan on what you're looking for, what you're willing to give up early in the count. And I think that's kind of how my approach has always been. I think that's why I have such kind of like that selective that aggression. I think for me it's about having that plan and sticking with my plan. I'm really comfortable with two strikes. I'm not worried that I'm going to strike out. I feel like I have good enough bat to ball skills to where I can battle with two strikes if I have to. I think the idea of just kind of going in with your plan, sticking with it no matter what the pitcher does early in the count, because you have that plan for a reason, and he's probably going to favor into your plan at some point in that at bat. And I think people really get in trouble when you walk up with a plan. It doesn't go your way in the first two, three pitches, and you kind of stray away from it, and you try and play in his favor now, and that's when he has the advantage. So I think for me, it's kind of just sticking with your plan the whole time, and I think there's even times where I'll get an advantage count and I'll be sold out for a fastball and he'll throw a slider and I'll swing right through it. Like, whatever, good. Like, that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want to put that in play because if I go and just try and make contact with that and I hit a ground ball, like, I'm kicking myself walking back to the dugout because I wasn't looking for that pitch. So I'm totally fine with swinging through pitches a lot of the time, especially in advantage counts because that's not what I'm looking for. And I think that's the biggest thing too is early in the count, I get like where I'm playing and positions I'm hitting in and how I've been doing. Like a lot of guys aren't going to throw me fastballs first pitch right down the middle. But in my head, I'm always looking for the fastball because when they do throw it, I need to be ready for that. And I think with my setup and my approach, I can adjust to hanging off speed. I mean, the pitches are, I mean, usually 7, 8 miles per hour slower than the fastball. Then you got the changeups that are probably 10, 15 miles per hour slower on some guys. So I think that's the biggest thing is staying on the fastball and just reacting to off speed that's up in the zone. And I think that's also why I take so many pitches that are borderline off speed pitches that just break out of the zone. That pitchers are probably thinking like, man, how did he not swing at that? It's because I was never going to swing at that. Like that was never part of my plan. So like you throwing that pitch that just breaks off the zone, I see spin. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm not going to swing at it. So I think that the whole idea of just kind of sticking with your plan is really what carries my approach.
I love that you mentioned that because I think that's where, and I'm always talking, with people about some of the metrics that maybe we can overvalue at points. And I think sometimes we're talking about zone contact doesn't always correlate as strongly because there are good swings and misses. Like, oh, great,
Yeah.
you dribbled one to the pitcher instead of swinging and missing in a 1-0 count. You're worse
Yep.
off because of that. But what's amazing with your approach is what you describe is exactly what you see in the data. And sometimes the feel versus real can be
Mhm.
very different, but you seem to really have just always known yourself as a hitter. What's amazing to me too, though, is how simple you mentioned your setup and your approach. You're very simple in the box, right? There's not a lot of moving parts. And sometimes I feel like those types of guys where you don't have, the big stride and you're kind of already close to your slot and where you want to be before you swing,
Yep.
seeing the ball early can sometimes put you in swing mode. And in your case, it doesn't, and it seems to be an asset. On top of that, you just have this knack for pulling the ball in the air, and obviously that correlates to
Yeah.
slug and a lot of positive results, and that's something that metrically, I think a lot of people are really trying to lean into now. How do you balance that simplicity? And allowing you to have that ability to consistently pull the ball in the air and be on time and catch the ball out front without maybe giving up the outer half when you need to battle and stuff like that as well. Because I could imagine for some guys, all of a sudden, you start thinking about getting to the pull side and you start pulling off maybe some harder stuff that's breaking away from you.
Yeah, for me, especially at Kentucky, we really worked on this a lot. And it was just kind of the idea of like staying, your foul pole to foul pole. And for me, it's like you go low to the backside, right field line. I want to stay down on low on the ground. And then as I go to the left field foul pole, it's just up in the air more and more. So I think you low to the backside, up to the pull side is what really helps me with my swing. And
Interesting.
the biggest thing for me too is Coach Minge always preached this was kind of that bottom inside part of the baseball. Like when I swing to hit the ball, I'm not aiming to hit the ball itself. I'm looking to hit the bottom inside part of the ball. And at college we called it the one, two, and three side of the ball. The two's the middle, the three is the outer part of the ball, and the one's the inner side. So every time I swing, I aim for the one minus, which is the bottom inside part of the ball. And I think that's what really keeps me having the ability to kind of pull the ball in the air and keep it fair without a lot of hooking the ball, and it keeps me inside of the ball a lot of the time. Which for me, when I can stay through the middle of the field and I'm a little bit early, I'll be able to pull it in the air. Or if I'm a little bit late, I can shoot it in the four hole or down the right field line. But I think just kind of the idea with anything of you aim small, your misses become just a little bit outside of that. So if you aim for just the ball itself, your misses start become swinging misses. Whereas if I'm aiming for the bottom inside part of the ball, sometimes I might hit the outer side of the ball, but you can still have a lot of success there too. The room for error becomes a lot larger because I'm no longer aiming for just to hit it, but I'm aiming for a specific part of that ball. And I think when I do find success doing that is when I find myself having really quality contact. And I think with any pitch they throw, the bottom inside part of the ball will always be a good spot to aim for. A slider, you stay inside of it, you shoot it right center. A fastball, you can stay inside of it and you drive it to left center. I think that's just the one of the biggest things that I've learned throughout my career is kind of like just that ability to just kind of have a little bit of a more centered focus on something and then just trying to be able to execute at that small of a just target, and then your misses become still successful.
Yeah, that's super interesting insight there into what you're thinking there. On the defensive side of the ball, when you were at Kentucky, I believe you were pretty much only in left field for the 2 seasons there. Now you've been in left field and right field both to start the year, and then since getting to Double A, you've started to play some center. What's that been like for you, and how do you feel that the defense has come along since your time at Kentucky?
Yeah, I've felt like my defense has taken a big jump this season. And I think it just happens to be just the amount of time I've gotten to play out there. I played at Charleston Southern my freshman year. I played infield for half the season, moved out to center field for the second half of that season. That was the first time I've ever played outfield. I mean, I've messed around with it as a kid, like just every like couple games I'd play out there for a couple innings. But for the first time seriously playing outfield was my freshman year of college, and then I played at Kentucky my sophomore year. I played left field. That was the first time I've ever played left field. And then you go into that summer and I tore my ACL, so it's like, okay, I'm still only having one full season in the outfield ever. I think the plan was for me to play center if I was never getting hurt that summer. I think that next year I was going to move over into center field, but once I got that injury and coming off that rehab, it was the best choice just to kind of play the corner and just give myself a little bit of some relief on the running side of things, kind of try and play it a little bit safe there. And
Because you're running on
uh,
every play if you're playing in center field.
yeah, exactly. You got to be somewhere every time. So I did that, and even then, it at that point. I mean, I'd say probably half my season, I'm still kind of thinking about the injury because I did do it in the outfield, making a throw to the plate. So like, it's always kind of in the back of your mind. So I was playing the outfield that year, and then this year is the first year off of being healthy again. Like fully back and fully confident in the outfield, and I think I got the corners down pretty good at this point. I think I'm really comfortable in the corner. And then I love playing center field, kind of the IQ I feel like I have for the game and just the anticipation that you have in center field and the ability to kind of read what's going on before things happen. You see the catcher setting up, you see the swings the batters take, you see where they shoot the ball like most often, and you can kind of anticipate where they're going to hit it. And I think that really helps, and I think that really shows like what I can do in center field. I don't think obviously I'm not the fastest guy you're going to put in center field. But I do think I have great anticipation skills out there. I think I have good IQ. I have good feel of where he's probably going to hit the ball, what pitches are coming next. I think being in center field, I can really show that. I think there's a lot of times where I'll be walking towards one gap and there it goes, and I'm already on the move over that way. And I think really getting to play some center field has been really cool. I think I've always had the ability to play center field. I think it's just I had never really had the chance to get any reps, and I totally understand, in high A, I'm playing with Drew Jones and Slade. Like those are two elite center fielders. Like those guys are our center fielders. Whereas, there could be an opportunity in the future where someone might need a center fielder and their team might need a center fielder. Like here, we had some injuries with some guys who played center and they're coming back off that and they're like, "Can you play center?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I can." And just getting that opportunity to do that and kind of showcase that, I think it really helps me as a player and just overall my profile of being able to actually be a center fielder as well as play the corners at a good level. So
Has there been any like just little cues that you've picked up on? Because again, you just talk about not having, excuse me, a ton of reps out there. Like even some of these younger guys, like Drew and Slade, probably actually seen more balls off the bat in center field. So were there little things even just watching them and the way that they kind of go about their business there, or like little things pre-pitch, tracking the ball? I know, of course, just reps is going to make a big difference, as you alluded to,
yeah.
but anything in that process that just, oh, wow, this made my jumps a little bit easier. Oh, wow, I'm tracking the ball a little bit easier now, up the middle.
Yeah, I think I remember talking with Drew about it, and we were talking in Hillsborough, and earlier in the season, there were some balls that were getting towards the fence, and we were talking, and Drew moves really well back. Like he's really good at going back on the ball, whereas me not playing as much in center field and playing mostly the corners, like I don't necessarily always go back on baseballs because if something's over my head in the corner, it's most likely a home run. Like I'm not chasing down a
Yeah,
ball
it's
over my
torched.
head. So it's for me, I was always really good at coming in on the ball. So when I got here, for me, my setup, I play a little bit deeper. I think my ability to come in on balls is really good. So then I cut a little bit of the ground going back on the ball. And I think that's helped a lot. And, just Drew, like talking about just how his drop steps and kind of putting his head down and running and then picking up the ball, like just little things like that as a center fielder that you have to do that you don't necessarily ever get the opportunity to do in the corner. Like you rarely see a ball hit, you just turn and run and put your head down and then you find it later because I mean, like I said, if you do that in the corner, it's a home run probably. So you're not really tracking the ball way deep over your head. But I definitely think early on that was something that like was something I needed to work on, like just getting comfortable with. And I think now I've gotten a lot more comfortable with that kind of skill and ability to just kind of put your head down and run. And I think that's been one that has been really cool kind of to learn and just kind of get the feel of that and being comfortable with doing that kind of stuff.
I wanted to just revisit the swing mechanics just quickly
Yeah.
because again, I think what makes it so impressive is if you could just tell everybody, hey, eliminate all the variables in your swing and just go from there, everyone would do it. But it's really hard to do. Not everybody can just be still like Gunnar Henderson and still be loose and let it rip. Again,
Mhm.
you are so still, at least it looks like it, and still able to generate such impressive bat speed, have the feel for the barrel and the good swing decisions. Have you always been that still? And or was it something that maybe you had to kind of tone down and remove variables through the years? Because again, I think for a lot of players, if you ask them to swing the way that you do, they'd either get a little bit like anxious or want to do something, want to move a little bit more. Like I think it's a huge asset to you and a big reason why I think you're always on time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably a huge reason why I'm always on time with stuff. And I think You know, my first year at college, I had a little bit of a little leg, not even a leg kick. It was just kind of a pick up, put down, front foot kind of thing. Really, still super simple. When I grew up, I had that swing, like just pick it up, put it down since I was like 8 years old. And it was like my dad and I always talked. I was like, you got to be on time. And the easiest way to get on time is by being simple and just making sure you get to the position you need to be in. And I think everyone in everyone's swing gets to the same spot at some point. Everyone gets to their landing spot, their hands are ready to swing. And for me, I just kind of, as the years gone on, I've just kind of slowly gotten more and more just towards that loading point to start because for me, the pitchers get better, their stuff gets better, they start throwing harder. And once that stuff starts happening, that's you can't have a lot of stuff going on in your swing because all those variables that the pitchers are adding up, it makes it a lot harder for you to get to that spot. So I think for me to be able to start there kind of allows me to one, pick up the pitch a lot earlier. Like get pitch recognition comes almost immediately out of the hand. I think with that, it allows me to stick with the approach, like I said earlier, my plan, like what pitch I'm looking for when I walk up there. And then it helps me to lay off pitches that I'm not looking for and lay off of just close 50-50 pitches because I've seen the ball for so long. And I think, like you said, my ability to kind of get the ball up in the air to the pull side, that kind of helps as well. Because if I'm loaded on time by the time the pitcher's releasing the ball, and he throws it inside, then that's my ability to kind of just turn on it and go. And I think that's the biggest thing with me too is when I have that simple setup and the mechanics. If I'm hitting foul balls or I'm mishitting baseballs, I know immediately it's all from timing. Like my whole swing stems off of timing. Like if I'm off time and I'm mishitting pitches that like right now, these past couple weeks I've felt really good being on time. And I think that the data and the metrics show like you can tell I've been on time. And I think when I go through a rough patch, it's not anything with like, oh, I'm coming down on the ball or my hands aren't getting to the right spot. It's all timing. I'm just a little bit late on the timing, which is really nice to know as a player because that helps you get out of those funks and keeps you from going into a long period of time where you might not be finding success because you know immediately what the problem was that night. Or and I can go, it could be at bat to at bat, pitch to pitch. I could just fouling off on the first pitch and I step out. I'm like, okay, if I was on time, I would have put that in play. Like I 100% believe that. So it's like you step out, you're like, okay, I was just a little late. Now you tone it back, you load a little bit earlier, and now it's go time again. So I think that's the biggest thing with kind of the simplicity of my style and my hitting is just the timing and the setup is my entire swing. I think the rest takes care of itself. If you, I'm a firm believer, and if you have a good setup, you're on time, and you swing at the right pitch, you're gonna find success more times than not. So those are the three things I worry about when I'm in the box. It's not really ever anything mechanically.
So you utilize the ground so well. So that was gonna be my follow up, maybe like in your cage work or whatever it may be. Something
Mhm.
I did notice just looking from the open side, again, might just be something that comes so naturally to you, is that the way that I'm always interested in like how guys are able to interact with the ground. Usually it's like, okay, you have something that's pulling you up and pushing you forward. How do you counteract that? But with someone that's as still as you are, it's like, okay, how are you getting into that back hip, or just how are you feeling like you're interacting with the ground effectively without, again, moving very much? And it seems like you
Yeah.
just have that slight pickup of your heel, and like at the same time, you can almost kind of see yourself kind of hinge into that back hip a little bit too. Is that
Yeah.
like a little bit of a cue to start the swing for you that obviously probably you're not thinking about in the box, but like what is the cue given how simple it is to engage that lower half?
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of the time I had some struggle in college where my hands would have like a little, not a hitch to them, but it was like a subconscious move because I wouldn't feel that I was fully loaded yet. And I think that's because I was still trying to work into my hip. And then that little subconscious move would be me slightly be late. So, um, throughout the year, a big cue for me is when I lift my heel, my hands get stopped in a set position, and then I work from there. And I think the biggest thing with my hip is kind of keeping that back knee pointing towards the catcher as long as possible. If I can keep that back knee back, that means my hip's in a good spot. I hold my weight back, and then by the time I choose to swing, that's when I just kind of release it all together. Um, and I think that's something I learned in college. Coach Amo, my hitting coach at Kentucky, and Coach Coggin were big on the back knee because I came in, I kind of my weight wanted to come forward, and with that weight coming forward, it just kind of puts you on a bad bat path. You're coming down on the ball, you're slicing the ball. Even if you're on time, you're still not coming from behind the ball. So I think when I could keep that knee back and get in that back hip, it really allowed me to kind of turn completely behind the ball and still be able to catch that ball deep and work through the middle of the field. And I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to like kind of getting into my back hip and just kind of keeping that timing. And for me, since it's such a simple setup and I'm not really gaining a crazy amount of ground forward, I can just hold that position. So if you do throw a curveball at like 79 miles per hour, 75 miles per hour, I'm just sitting there. So I'm waiting until it comes to me, which there's times I find myself in the flip side where I recognize the pitch so early that and I'm just sitting waiting that I jump towards it. So the biggest thing for me is kind of the idea of letting the ball come to me, even if it's an 100 mile per hour fastball, like just kind of let it come to me and then kind of work from behind it. Because the second I leave my legs, like we were saying, and using the ground is when you jump at the ball and then you just get yourself in a bad position. So biggest thing for me is kind of just sitting and waiting on that and then just kind of exploding once it gets to me at the plate.
Yeah. One last aspect of your game to touch on. The stolen bases have ticked up a lot for you, especially since getting to the double A level. Is that sort of a result of you just being healthy, like we've talked about, or is it also something you've been kind of emphasizing in your game as you keep progressing?
Yeah, I think it all kind of stemmed at Kentucky or even Charleston Southern. Once I got to college, I've always been a base stealer. I think base running and base stealing is 99% just confidence. I think when you get on the bases, the thing that hurts people is just being timid. I think when you're on the bases, your lead all depends on your confidence. How confident are you to get out there and not get picked off? How far can you get without getting picked off? Um, then it's all about your jump. When you're timid and you're tense, your jump's slower. You're not going to get as good of a jump. When you're relaxed and you're just chilling out there ready to run, you get a good jump. And I think those things all kind of add together. And like I said earlier, I'm not a 70 grade speed guy. Like I'm not Chandler Simpson swiping 130 bags based off just good speed and I'm just outrunning everyone. I think in my game, it's about the lead I get and the jumps I get. Those are the two things that matter to me. And I think I talked to our base running coordinator and outfield coordinator when he came out to Hillsborough, and when I was in Hillsborough, and my lead was fine, but it definitely could have been bigger because I was getting back easy every time there was a pickoff attempt. So when I added another extra step to my lead, and then I got called up to double A a couple weeks later. But since then, my lead's been bigger, and I'm getting the same jumps. But now, instead of maybe getting tagged out right in front of the bag, like I'm safe. The bang bang is going my way now, just based off your lead. And I think that's the biggest thing I like when I talk to people about base stealing or base running. It's all kind of just that confidence aspect. Like if you're out there and you're worried about getting picked off, it's just like anything hitting. If you're in the box thinking you're going to strike out, you're probably going to strike out. And if you're on the bases like, oh, I might get thrown out here, you're probably going to have a bad jump and you're probably going to get thrown out. So it's kind of just that mindset of just like the aggression, but just being confident when you're doing the things on the bases.
You mentioned base running coordinator. I know it sounds like Kentucky was also just a really huge part of your just development and all the resources that you had there. But imagine also just going to an organization like the Diamondbacks, and who I know have been really focusing on player development, especially of late, and all the resources that you have at your disposal. What has that been like as you just level up your game now and just continue to progress, and all the just things that you have at your disposal as you're hitting this next phase of your career?
Yeah, it's been great. They're really focused on our development and allowing us to play free, but then kind of talking with us and to us about things that we could obviously be better at and develop at. And I think that's the key to all of it. And I think that's kind of exactly what we did in college too at Kentucky. I think the Diamondbacks in Kentucky have very, very similar philosophies when it comes to playing the game of baseball. I think they believe in you being a hard worker, you playing hard, you just giving max effort. And I think they also value like the little things in baseball that kind of get overlooked a lot of the time. Nowadays everyone's hitting home runs, everyone's throwing really hard, and that's kind of like what the game's evolving to. But I still think the ability to be able to run the bases, the ability to bunt, the ability to make the routine plays when it comes to defense, the ability of just doing the little things. And then obviously we're all good enough players and we're all in the game of baseball nowadays that comes with home runs and throwing hard. I think those things will all come and that's part of it. But I think that's really what separates people from each other is the ability to consistently do the little things right. And I think that's kind of what we always harped on at Kentucky because on paper we weren't always the top team. You didn't look at our roster and you're like, oh, this team's gonna be in Omaha this year. But we did the little things right more than the other teams did, and I think that's why we won games. And when you can kind of, everyone always preaches about kind of your consistency and your ability to just be really good at things that are supposed to come easy. And obviously, it's not always going to work, but the ability to be able to do those things at a very high level is what's going to allow you to win games and allow you to climb the ladder and allow you to become good baseball players. So I think that's something that we've really harped on, and I think that's huge when it comes to player development because everyone's working on their swing, everyone's working on their routes and catching fly balls, everyone's working on those kind of things. But the guys that go out and they're working on laying down a bunt or they're working on stealing a base or they're working on their jumps. I mean, I think that those are the separators when it comes to when you start evaluating high level players because the only reason you're going to be in the conversation of a high level player is because of obviously your baseball stats. But then what separates you from the other guy is the little thing that you might be doing better than he can. So I think those are some really important aspects of what we've done here.
Yeah. When you talk about all these things that the organization is just doing at such a high level, and then you combine that with the fact that this is a team that's been competitive in the playoffs recently, got a lot of other prospects like yourself, I'm sure it's pretty easy to just get excited about the future of the D-backs, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, getting here and obviously being my first full years with these guys, last year when I got to Visalia, I thought that group of young guys there was really good. You have Crisantes, you had Drew, you had Tareen and Luis, and you had all these guys that are young. They're 19 years old last year and 20 years old. And, coming from college where I just played in the SEC, I'm like, dude, I just would sit there and be like, imagine if these guys were freshmen in college right now. Like, these guys are legit. Like, they're great players. And now you get up to double A where these guys are more my age now and they're maybe a year older than me. But, you know, we got like Tommy and Gino and Conticello and Hurley and all these guys. And it's like, it's just super exciting to see the amount of players that we have that are super high level. And, you know, it's super cool to be able to kind of play with both of them this year. You know, I played with the guys in Hillsborough that were in Visalia last year that are on the younger side of our prospects. And then now, you know, I'm up in double A with guys more my age now, but it's like it's super cool to see that, you know, the guys that are knocking on the door right now and then the guys who are going to be there in a year or two. And it's super exciting to see like the amount of talent that we have and the type of guys they are too. You know, that kind of gets overlooked sometimes with baseball. You know, a lot of it's just about how good you play the game, but they're all really, really good dudes too, which is very important when it comes to team culture. And I think that's a huge part of baseball too, is just the type of team you have and the camaraderie that you have. And I think that's also part on why Kentucky did so well. Is we just loved being around each other. Like we could just go hang out in someone's house for a full day. And I think you can do that with this team here too. I think we got the same group of guys and the same kind of friendships here that you can just, I mean, baseball or not, we'd still have a great time with each other. So I think that's super cool to see.
I love that. I mean, it's proven. I mean, that's going to usually correlate to good results. I know the Rays, big reason why they've had a lot of successes.
Yep.
They really do try to formulate those relationships within the org, and it's the reason why I think almost every affiliate seems to be doing well for them, like every single year. Last one
Yeah.
for me is just looking back on this year. You know, aside from the 885 OPS that you have on the season, and I think if you queue up the last 50 games, the 932 OPS you have, how would you evaluate, you know, just the year for yourself, and maybe what are you just most proud of that you were able to do here in this first full pro season?
Yeah, you know, I think I think I've had a really, really good season so far. I think that we still got a couple weeks left and hopefully can continue what's been going on lately and carry on through. But I thought I've carried out my plan pretty well. I think that's kind of what I would have liked to measure my success on this year, not necessarily numbers, which those ended up coming with it, but I think just my plan on going into the year was kind of just playing as hard as I could, playing hard every day. Um, and I think obviously with my skill set, I think hitting was something that I thought I would do. I thought I would be a hitter. I think that's what I am first when it comes to baseball is a hitter. But I think what's really impressed me the most this year has been my defense. I think people watching too have seen that I've taken a big step forward in defense, and I think that was one of the question marks when it came into last year going into the draft was he's going to be a hitter. Is he going to be able to carry his weight defensively? Is he going to be able to be an above average defender, or is he just going to be someone that you're putting in the lineup because he has a bat? And I think I've turned some heads, and I think I've impressed on the defensive side of the ball, which has allowed me to become a much more well-rounded baseball player when it comes to the respects of scouts watching the player development people, just anyone who sees the game of baseball. I think that has helped me a lot because I feel like I've always been a hitter with good instincts on the bases. I can steal bases, and it just came down to the defense. And I think I played really well in the corners to start the year. And I think when I got to Amarillo and I got to start playing center field too, it really, really helped me on the side of just being a defender and being a quality defender when it comes to being out on the field.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think the mere fact that they've been running you out there in center field now every day for the last few weeks says something about, you know, what you've showed them defensively. And then
Sure.
again, I think you don't even have to sell yourself offensively, but even so, you've probably exceeded some expectations because not a lot
For
of
sure.
guys are putting up numbers like that first full year out of the draft. So it's been really cool to see, man. Congratulations on all the success this year.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for taking the time. Looking forward to watching you sprint through the finish line over these last few weeks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.